Dave Ramsey says, do not go into debt, but I want to be in as much debt as possible. Real estate is literally the most leverageable asset on the planet. So why not buy as much leveraged real estate as possible and get into as much debt as possible?
So why do you guys think he says that? To me, it's kind of like he's just taking the easy answer. Like
I think he wants to sell courses to tell you not to go into debt.
Yeah, but that's the most easy answer. My message is like, Dave, don't be lazy. You know what I mean? Like that sounds lazy to me to just say, go pay cash because there's no skill involved. And not to mention, you're talking to people who want to go build wealth. They don't have a big business selling financial advice to other people like you do, Dave. So like, to me, it's kind of a lazy answer. And he's also, the thing that bothers me about Dave, I'd love to have him on the show, by the way. That'd be fun to have Mr. Ramsey on the show. But the thing that bothers me about him is like he teaches people to do one thing, but he does another. In other words, he's not teaching people to go build products and services and build business. He's telling people to stop drinking, the Starbucks coffee and pinch pennies and save for a lifetime for a piece of real estate. So I don't know, man. I don't know if I can agree with that. I think that leverage is an amazing thing.
I think Dave Ramsey gives average advice for the average person that wants to live an average life. Look, he's speaking to people that go into consumer debt, and that's where you need to differentiate. There is good debt and there's bad debt. And oftentimes, growing up as kids, as adults, you only hear don't go into debt, don't go into debt. But it's talking about consumer debt, bad debt. You're buying doodads. Like this is literally like Robert Kiyosaki, rich dad, poor dad shit. Like you can get a credit card, go buy a bunch of stuff you don't need and get in a bunch of like bad debt because you bought a bunch of crap you don't need. That's not the same as going and getting a bank loan or seller financing loan or a private money loan on a piece of real estate that you leverage and buy that then puts money in your pocket. Consumer debt takes money out of your pocket. It's high interest money. Leveraged real estate, if purchased right on fundamentals, is going to kick off cash flow to pay you every month and create a lot of wealth. So I think Dave Ramsey's speaking to those that have been irresponsible with their money and their finances, that have got into consumer debt and don't necessarily want to be wealthy through real estate. That said, Dave Ramsey owns $600 million worth of real estate. So he's well on his way to owning $1 billion worth of real estate. But his game and his message is speaking to those that use debt poorly, not use debt as a tool. Debt can literally make you poor, and it can literally make you extremely wealthy if used in the right way to purchase the right types of things.
I go back to my story. I mean, like, there's no, I got out of the military. I had nothing. I was able to get into a house with no money down because of the VA loan, but I started my company borrowing against a piece of real estate that was upside down. There's no way I'd be where I'm at without using leverage, without borrowing, without building a company from scratch. And I think the litmus test is like, go ask the billionaires what they do. They use leverage all the time. Everything they do is leverage. They borrow money. They use other people's capital to grow businesses, to buy massive real estate portfolios. They use leverage against their equities on their stocks to get tax-free dollars to go out and do bigger things. Like, they all use leverage. So I think that's the point that Gabe's saying is like, it's
it's a dangerous message though, because like if I tell somebody, look, get out of college and go to work and pinch pennies and do not buy a house, like a single family home, like even in your own primary residence, until you can pay cash. They're going to spend multiple years chasing a market, paying rent somewhere. That's what's going to happen to that person. And when you look at the average American, most Americans have their net worth tied up in their home, their primary residence. And you look at the difference between somebody 20 or 30 years ago that bought a home and used debt versus somebody who didn't, and it's millions and millions of dollars in difference in net worth. So for me, it's a dangerous message. Like not going into any good debt is going to be hurtful over time. I don't see the validity in the message.
But it's also the value. Like it's Dave Ramsey's not speaking to real estate investors that want to build and grow multi-million-dollar portfolios, right? Like that is the advantage of specifically real estate. Is there's a reason banks will give you leverage. I've purchased almost my entire real estate portfolio on 90 to 100% leverage, right? But my portfolio today sits at about 50% LTV, 50% leverage, because over time, cash flow goes up. Over time, values go up. Over time, you create all this wealth, all this equity, right? And that's not that's so different than going and buying a car you can't afford, or even it's different than even buying your primary residence. Like, people got their ass kicked when they, in 2003, 4, 5, when they bought more than they could afford because the banks allowed it, and then all of a sudden they had to get their properties taken back. That's very different than buying real estate on fundamentals, where the property itself, the income from that property actually supports the debt. It's smart debt. It's debt to go build and increase revenue and increase your portfolio, not debt to just go buy something stupid that you don't need.
It's called leverage for a reason. It's because you use it. Now, you can use it irresponsibly. It's like a gun. It's powerful. It can blow your head off. I always say that. But that's why it's called leverage. People use leverage to multiply their equity, to multiply their cash flow. And you're not getting cash flow off a car that's depreciating. You're not getting cash flow off your primary residence. There's an example in our book, the 0 to 100 Units book, where we give an example of someone, say they inherited $1 million, right? Because, hey, Dave Ramsey, I have cash. I'm not in debt. I inherited $1 million. And we go through an example. If you took that $1 million and bought a $1 million apartment building, let's say, with cash. And yeah, you raise rents, you grow it. Go check the book out because it's interesting. You raise rents, cash goes up, the values go up. It's great. You own this apartment building, which if you're going to have $1 million, go do that, right? But then we say, go buy 4 $1 million apartment buildings and put $250,000 down on each apartment building, or go buy a $4 million apartment building and put $1 million down. The numbers are freaking staggering. The cash flow is like 2x if you're using proper leverage, and we put some assumptions in there. But now you've got $4 million worth of real estate that's appreciating. So you have such a lever that's happening as opposed to a $1 million piece of real estate that's appreciating. So go look at the numbers, man. It's like staggering, the difference between paying cash and using leverage, responsible leverage.
Yeah, we're talking about responsible, and we talk about this in our mastermind all the time. We're looking at the numbers and understanding what is NOI, what's debt service, what's the DSCR, what's the cash flow. Like, that's hard. And that's why I said that that's this lazy advice. What's hard is to actually go take responsible debt and grow something. And it's a, there's some strategy to it, to do it in a way that's safe, to where you have a good margin of safety. But like Gabe said, it's the most leverageable asset in the world. And it allows us, folks who don't have a company like Dave's. Dave does amazing sales to selling financial advice. Not everybody has that. There's a lot of school teachers out there and firefighters and people, W-2s that they don't have a multi-million-dollar business where they can go pay cash for a property, right? But if they listen to that advice and go rent for 30 years, my God, the difference in net worth is massive versus saying, hey, I'm going to maybe do a house hack or a primary residence to get my foot in the game and get some equity there. I think that the difference between the two is staggering. And so just saying to pay cash with everything, I think it probably works if you're making millions and millions of dollars in a business. That's not bad advice. Like, if I'm making, you're making $10 million in your business, yeah, go pay your house off. That sounds great. Go buy a commercial piece of property and pay it off, because you're not, you're risk averse. But that's not the average American. The average American is not doing that.
Hey guys, if you like what you're hearing on the 0 to 100 podcast, come join the 0 to 100 Elite Mastermind. We have a very simple goal for you. That's replace your day job, make $120,000 a year plus in cash flow, real estate, and become a millionaire. That's it. If you like that, if that's you, click the link below and we'll see you on the 0 to 100 Elite Mastermind.
I also think it depends on like what you want in your life. What are you actually trying to build, right? I mean, I think about even some of the tax advantages of having debt versus cash, right? Like, even specifically in real estate, we've talked about cash out refinances, right? I buy a property undervalued, I increase the NOI. I've mentioned the example many times with some of my mobile home parks, right? I bought well. I was able to increase the NOI by decreasing expenses, increasing revenue, and I could have sold the property for a profit, right? And then I would have that cash, but that's a capital gain, right? I'd be taxed on that. I'd need to go put that money somewhere else. But debt is actually looked at differently because debt is not taxed. So when you do a cash out refi, all of a sudden that becomes tax-free wealth. That's why people use 1031s. That's why people refinance and pull cash out, because that money you pull out, you're not taxed on. That's another huge advantage when you're leveraging real estate, is you're able to access capital that's technically looked at as debt, and you're not actually taxed on that gain because you're actually using the equity from the property through the instrument of debt to go redeploy into other assets.
That's why billionaires that own massive, paper assets or equity portfolios, they borrow against that. They leverage against it because it's tax free, and they don't have to sell, they don't have the capital gains of it.
But also, when you don't have debt on a property, it's simple, right? The property's paid off and you hold it and cash flow it and whatever. When you introduce debt, it introduces a different component, and that component actually plays very well with the current system, our governmental system that continues to add supply to the money supply and deflate the dollar. When you have debt, the underlying debt also depreciates in the value that it represents as inflation happens. So for example, $1 million in debt on a commercial property that's responsible, if you have 8% inflation in 1 year, that $1 million has gone down in the underlying value it represents, therefore making you richer and wealthier as the land owner, right? Or the asset owner. So debt plays really nicely with inflation. And in a country where we consistently have inflation, we have inflation on purpose here. Like we have 2% is the target or something. I mean, it's on purpose. They purposely devalue the dollar every single year. That's the target. And so I think that you've got to look at the game, look at the system and say, okay, we can't change the system. We could maybe agree or disagree. It doesn't really matter. How do we play the system? And debt plays very nicely into a system that has consistent inflation.
I think maybe one of the riskiest pieces of this advice with Dave Ramsey is he's telling you to sacrifice today for tomorrow. Tomorrow's not guaranteed, right? I mean, cancel the gym membership, pinch pennies, cut coupons, don't get the latte, don't live your life. Don't take the vacation with your family. Don't create those core memories. So someday you can. And I do believe that delayed gratification is important. Don't be an idiot. Don't go buy a Ferrari on, with a loan. But I think that's really risky. And I think, and Mitch, we were just talking off air a little bit. You were talking about, and we all agreed, when you're hanging out with millionaires, what's the conversation? Are people talking about budgeting and canceling gym memberships and pinching pennies? Like, if you want to be a multimillionaire, live a big life, what are these people talking about?
Well, the scarcity mindset is like save $100. The abundant mindset is to find a way to create an extra $1,000, right? So, and yes, sometimes I think there's those early sacrifices in the early years. But if your desire is to go travel the world and buy the Ferrari, drink the fucking lattes, buy yourself the car, take the vacation, if that's and that's not important to everybody, and not even saying that's important to us. I mean, the travel, yes, I want to go everywhere in the world, but the point is scarcity is not buying those little things that honestly, I don't know anyone that's become wealthy by not buying that drink once a day or whatever. The wealthy are focused on how to generate more revenue, so that if your desire is to travel the world and buy the Lambo and do these extravagant things, then you need to create enough wealth in order to do that. And saving $5 a day is average advice for an average life, but it's not going to get you that abundant lifestyle if that's what you're really after.
Love it. I'll put a bow on this with, I think that the questions you ask yourself are the questions you answer. So if I'm spending all of my energy, my waking hours asking myself, how do I pay off the credit card? I'll find a solution for it. How to get out of debt? I'll find a solution for that. But if I'm asking myself, how do I live a bigger life? How do I build wealth? How do I build, equity, cash flow? How do I build a life where I can travel anywhere I want with my kids anytime I want? How can I be healthy? How can I you got to be careful about what you use, the most valuable asset, and you burn that asset on. You got to be careful about what you spend your time on. So for me, I want to ask bigger questions so I get bigger answers, and asking where I can find the cheapest gas and how I can stop, buying Starbucks coffee. That doesn't seem productive.